Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
It's the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Prograis.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF World Champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 355 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as ever by former heavyweight world title challenger, my good friend Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how you doing this week, my man?
No, I'm doing good, my man. How about you?
Always good when speaking with you, Eddie. That is the truth. We're going to dive straight into the review part of the show here. We're going to start with a card that took place on Saturday at the Bournemouth International Centre in Dorset, United Kingdom. This one was live on Sky. If you watched it, we're going to start with the undercard here. Caroline Dubois with a win, a TKO in round 3 against Happy Dowdy, who's now 11-11 with a draw. Caroline Dubois now 3-0, I believe, with 2 KOs. I think a clear future world champion. I think we can say that already about her. Fraser Clark with a win. He's now 2-0. He was able to make quick work, really, of Ariel Bracamonte, a former Dave Allen opponent. I think he might have been drafted in on short notice, to be fair to him, but still a big old unit. I say that almost with a smile on my face because he's not in the best of shape, of course, but yeah, he came in at 309 pounds. You've got to take him somewhat seriously. I think he weighed 309 pounds, but anyway, he got in there, like I say, with Fraser Clark. Fraser Clark took him out in 2 rounds, so Fraser Clark now 2-0, Bracamonte 11-9. Elsewhere on the card, the pro debut for Ben Whittaker, the Olympic silver medalist from the latest Olympics. He was able to knock out in 2 rounds Greg O'Neill, who's now 6-7 with a draw. I mean, we all knew that Ben Whittaker was going to get the stoppage in that fight there. It was just a case of what round was it going to be. If he went to the second half of the fight, I think some people wouldn't have been too pleased, but he looked really, really good. Very, very flashy, of course, making Greg O'Neill miss and kind of, taking him for a bit of an idiot at times, I think. I don't think it's sometimes that necessary because he's so flamboyant, it's so cocky. And I don't think you need to do it against, a guy like this that isn't a threat at all. I would like to see Ben Whittaker do that to a more established name, absolutely. Sometimes you can overdo it, in my opinion. Some people love it, some people hate it, and they don't like it at all. It doesn't matter who you're in with. But when you see a guy be that cocky, be that flashy with a complete out-and-out journeyman, sometimes I think, okay, do it a little bit, but don't overdo it. I think at times he did overdo it. But listen, it's exciting, and you have to sell yourself in some way to make it. I believe in that. And he's a medalist from the Olympics. He's turned pro. He's looked good. He's got a knockout. He was flashy. He's got a very bright personality. I think he said he's the full package. He's got everything: the personality, the looks. He can fight, all the rest of it. So it's going to be an exciting journey, and I can't wait really to see it unfold. Good stuff for him. 1-0. Also on the card, we had Stephen McKenna move to 12-0, a TKO in round 2. Another knockout for him. This time his victim was Facundo Rojas, who's now 6-6 with a draw. Mikel Lawau as well with a win, a KO in round 2 against Crispulo Andino, who's now 22-13 with a draw. Lawau now 16-0. Joe Pigford with a knockout in round 3 against Raphael King. Pigford's now 20-0 with 19 KOs. I just don't understand as well. Are they going to step him up anytime soon? We need to see him box for a title. I don't think he's ever boxed for a title. Raphael King, as I say, was in the opposite corner. He's now 15-2 with a draw. Not a bad looking record, but I think he was flown in on, or I'm not sure flown in, but he turned up, on fight week. I don't think he had much notice. It seems like a lot of people on this card didn't have much notice. And getting on to the main event, Chris Billam-Smith now 16-1, a unanimous decision over 12 rounds against Isaac Chamberlain, who's now 14-2. It was, of course, for the EBU Cruiserweight Championship and the Commonwealth title. The first half of the fight, I mean, there were so many momentum swings. I think a few people picked up on that. Both men were throwing hell for leather, really, in the first few in particular. And I felt that both men at times were hurt. Isaac's left eye became swollen quite early on in the contest. I decided not to actually score the fight round by round, but I felt that the cleaner of the work early on was a lot of the time Chamberlain's, and the volume and the more maybe powerful shots, the more perhaps eye-catching shots were from Billam-Smith. But I did think Billam-Smith was in the driving seat for most of the fight, and as the fight wore on, of course, that's when Billam-Smith, despite looking dog-tired at times, was able to find another gear and dig deep, and Isaac couldn't quite keep up the pace with him, and maybe that was that recent ring inactivity that I mentioned last week, and maybe that bit Chamberlain in the backside, and maybe the reverse effect for Chris Billam-Smith, maybe it gave him that extra gear, as I said, because he had been the distance in a few hard domestic fights of late. And there's no doubting Isaac Chamberlain's heart. I mean, I told everyone that years ago. I remember being at York Hall when his shoulder got dislocated, and the referee stopped the fight for the doctor to come in and have a look at it, because he literally couldn't move it, and he clicked it into place in front of everybody with this I never forget the face he had on when he was putting it in. His eyes rolled back in his head as he clicked it back into place. You can see the pain was just unbelievable. So there's no doubt in his heart, and he went on to win that fight, of course, against Wadi Camacho. But yeah, I feel for Isaac Chamberlain, really, because I don't think he's got a lot out of his career, and he finds himself in another really bad spot here. He's kind of in no man's land. He has, again, all the skills and all the rest of it, but he just hasn't really been manoeuvred properly, I don't think. And I'm not sure what is going to happen with his career, really, because obviously he's been in, 2 big fights. He's lost both times. And I just don't know. I mean, there's other domestic fights, maybe someone like a Dion Juma, but he's already been in there with the likes of Luke Watkins and beat him, and it was close, but I didn't think it should have been close. I think he won it clearly. But he's kind of like, I don't know, he finds himself in a difficult position because he is better than certain people domestically, but I'm not so sure he's the best domestically. So I don't know where he goes, because Chris Billam-Smith, I mean, he's a European champion, so maybe Isaac's one of the best we've got in the UK, and strictly just the UK, don't go any further. Maybe that's where his position will be, but it's a shame because I think he's got enough skills and enough tools to go beyond that, but whether or not we'll see it, I don't know. You need the opportunities, of course, and everything, the timing, it all has to be right. But as for Chris Billam-Smith, really pleased for him. Another scalp on his record, another credible scalp, and I do want to see him get the rematch with Richard Riakporhe. I think that would put the icing on what's been a good run, and arguably he should have won that fight against Riakporhe. I think there was a dodgy knockdown that cost him the fight on the scorecards. Anyway, that's it for the main event there. Let's move now to another one that took place on the same night in the UK. The two shows clashed. Let's start with the undercard. Pat McCormack with a win, now 2-0, a TKO in round 2 against Dimitri Trenel, who's now 8-2. Harlem Eubank with a win, now 15-0. We don't see it very often, but his opponent, Elliot Chavez of Mexico, was actually disqualified in round 9 of a 10-rounder. He's now 11-5 with a draw. Friend of the show, Harlem Eubank. Very, very, very strange fight, to be honest with you. Because the referee called break. I can't remember what round it was in now, but he called break. And then Chavez hit Harlem Eubank with about 2 or 3 shots and put him down. And it was after the referee called break. So, Harlem Eubank goes down, and it was quite, he was dropped quite heavily, to be honest with you. I think the first punch, when they showed you this slow motion replay, the first punch, he took it and kind of put his arms up like, whoa, what's going on? And he looked at the referee, and then he gets hit with another one, then he goes down, and his head kind of fell through the bottom rope. And he took a few minutes, to be honest. The referee gave him 5 minutes, but he took a few minutes to kind of regroup before jumping straight back in and, continuing the rest of the fight. So, yeah, really, he could have stayed down and got a disqualification, and many people would have, but he decided to get back up, and I admire him for that. He's a really good guy, Harlem Eubank, certainly one of my favourites. So yeah, he got back up, he decided to continue, and Chavez said he couldn't understand the language of what the referee said when he said break, and then he said that if Chavez were to do it again, he'd be disqualified, and lo and behold, in round 9 he did do it again, and this time the referee had no other choice but to disqualify him. It wasn't as bad the second time round, he didn't put Harlem Eubank down, but yeah, he was disqualified. And rightly so. I actually had a bet on Harlem Eubank to win on points, so I was a bit annoyed that he got stopped in round 9 of 10, but he certainly was cruising to a points win, and yeah, that's that really. Moving to the main event on that card, Josh Kelly now 12-1 with a draw, a unanimous decision over 10 rounds against Lucas Bastida, who's now 18-2 with a draw. Yeah. It was for the WBO International Super Welterweight title. I'm happy for Kelly. It's another win, I guess, on this comeback trail that he's on after losing to Avanesian. He's been messed around a little bit. I think a couple of pullouts and stuff recently. So I'm happy for him to... I think he's fought now twice in quite quick succession, so I'm happy that he's back active again. He needs to have another run at something. I did try and get him on this week's show. I reached out a couple times, didn't hear anything back, so unfortunately he's not our guest this week. But yeah, all the best to him. Good win and tough opponent, which we knew, to be totally honest. Moving out now to the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, USA. Let's start with the undercard over here. Sergei Derevianchenko with a win, now 14-4. A unanimous decision win over 10 rounds against Joshua Conley, who's now 17-4 with a draw. Very wide on the cards, I think about 9-1, 8-2, stuff like that for Derevianchenko. Happy for him to get a win, because as I said on last week's show, I think he'd lost maybe 4 of his last 5 fights, but he'd been in there with some of the best fighters, or absolutely the best fighters, to be honest, in the world at his weight, like... the Golovkins, the Charlos, and a couple of other guys, Jacobs as well. So happy for him to get a win. I still think he's not quite done, even though his record doesn't look the prettiest. He's still one of the best fighters in the world. Adam Kaunaki, Eddie, I'm not sure if you saw any of this. He's now 20-3. That is 3 back-to-back defeats. Obviously, he got stopped by Hellenius in both the fights. He got in with... Did he get stopped in both the fights? I think he did. And then he gets in here with Ali Aaron Demarizen, who, as I said, had quite an extensive amateur background. His one loss as a pro came to Efia Jagba. And yeah, Demarizen, man, he fought well. He took some good shots, had to soak them up. But all in all, he put the pressure on Kaunaki, which we don't always see. And yeah, Kaunaki with absolutely no head movement. I felt really bad because I like Kaunaki. He's been on the show before. He's a friend of the show. If you've been on the show before, it means I support you in your fights. So I wanted him to win. But I had to say that I did actually tweet saying that he reminds me of a snowman because he's built like one. You know, he doesn't have any hair and he does not move his head. And I think a few people liked that, but I like him, like I say, but I think it was quite a good resemblance. But yeah, I don't know where he goes. He's in a heap of trouble. Again, Eddie, I don't know if you saw any of it, but to hear that Kaunaki's now racked up 3 losses in a row, he's in a terrible position. I think he even said himself, like before the fight, that if he were to lose, like, what's the point in carrying on?
Yeah. Funniest thing. I'm actually in the camp. You know, I think his brother helps run the camp for this kid named Damian Niaba. He's really young. I've been sparring with him recently, but he's pretty good. And I was talking with him the day of the fight. Funny enough. And he said, "Oh yeah, Adam has a fight tonight." And I'm like, oh, "Okay." I'm fully expecting him to win the fight, thinking it's a good comeback fight, for him or something like that. But to hear that he lost, and I was actually talking to people who was actually watching that, I couldn't get it on for some reason, and they say, "Yeah, he lost," and I'm like, wow. You know what I mean? To lose the 2 fights that he wasn't expected to lose with Hellenius. And you say, okay, well, Hellenius at one point in his career was somewhat of a special guy, somebody who, you was figuring would be a force to be reckoned with. But I don't know about this kid that he lost to. I don't know much about him. You know what I mean? But to lose again in a fight that most people figured that you were going to win, it just really puts you in a bad place. Now, it doesn't mean his career is over. It just means that now he has to understand that he's going to be fighting the B side. He's going to be looked at as a stepping stone. So for him, in order to win and become the Adam Kalnowski of the past, he's going to have to do it on the road. You understand what I'm saying? He's going to have to do it in a way that he's not necessarily used to doing. You know what I mean? He's going to have to take maybe some short money, for some tough fights for some short money, and it's going to be difficult, but he can do it. You know what I mean? He's a tough guy. He's got a good motor. Seems like a respectable dude. So you just got to get back in the gym. You got to start working on moving your head. You just got to start working on prolonging your career, because at this time, you know what I mean, you can't continue to take a punch to throw a punch. And as you get older, you start to get a whole lot more tenderized. You know what I mean? So, unfortunately, he's lost. He seems like a good guy. I hope he gets himself back in. I'm always for the underdog, especially guys who are are aging and looking like they're falling off. So I want to see him come back and come back strong.
Yeah, and when I tweeted that about him being like a snowman, someone pointed out that Demarizen's nickname is actually the Iceman, which was kind of interesting. For Kalnowski, I remember him bursting on the scene about 5 years ago when he knocked out Artur Szpilka, which was very, very impressive, because I remember, obviously, Artur Szpilka in the fight before had given a really good account of himself to Deontay Wilder, and it took Wilder a long time to get him out of there. It was late that he got him out of there, but obviously Kalnowski did it very early, and then after that, he went in there with the usual suspects. Really, I guess I'm going to call them. In fact, that's probably a little bit disrespectful, but he got in there with Iago Kaladze. That's a guy who, loses every big fight. He's lost to Joe Joyce, Michael Hunter, people like that, Yuri Kalenga, and he knocked him out as well. So he put those 2 back-to-back knockouts together. Then he went the distance and beat Charles Martin, which was a very good win as well. He was the second man to beat Martin at the time. Martin had only lost to Joshua. So that was a good win for Kalnowski. And everyone started to get a bit carried away, saying, oh, this guy could potentially do something. Everyone started believing in him, especially the Eastern Europeans. Then he gets in there with Gerald Washington, knocks him out in 2 rounds. Brilliant. He's doing all the right things. Then he has that brilliant fight against Chris Arreola where they threw about 10,000 punches and he beat Arreola on points. And then, the 2 back-to-back defeats against Hellenius, both by knockout, kind of reminds me a little bit of David Price when he was knocking out all these names. Then all of a sudden, he gets found out by Tony Thompson and completely has his career derailed. He could never end up getting it back on track, David Price, because any good win he got was followed shortly after by a vicious loss. And for Kalnowski, I fear he might be in the same position. Obviously, he's nothing like David Price in terms of his boxing skills, his boxing style, his body type, his build, his height, or anything like that. But I just think career-wise, banging out good fighters, looking good, beating former world champions, beating former title challengers and stuff, and then loses to an older guy in Hellenius, just like Tony Thompson when he was about 44 when he beat David Price. And he's come back against a guy who people thought he could beat, but it was a tough fight, to be honest. I gave him credit for jumping in with him because he was coming off about a year out of the ring as well. So it didn't go right for him. Elsewhere on the card, we had Gary Antoine Russell, now 16-0, friend of the show, a TKO in round 6 against Rances Barthélemy down in round 6. Happy for Gary Antoine Russell, obviously. He extends that knockout streak, but I have a big issue with the stoppage. Rances Barthélemy, for the first time in his career, suffers a loss by knockout. He's now 29-2 with a draw. What I didn't like is that when Barthélemy went down, He got back up. For me, was clearly okay, and the referee straight away waved it off. I couldn't see what the referee saw. I looked at the guy's eyes in slow motion. I looked at the guy's legs. There was nothing that indicated that he couldn't continue, especially when you know about the guy. He's a tough guy. You know, he'd never been stopped. I'm not sure I don't know if he'd been down, or if he has been down, he's certainly been down only a small number of times. He's a generally tough guy, good chin, Cuban fighter, and he was in this fight at times actually standing and trading with Gary Antoine Russell, and having big moments. I think he hurt Gary Antoine Russell a couple of times, and he's not really known as a big banger, and it's not really his style at all to stand there and bang. So the way the fight had gone, and what you already know about Barthélemy as a fighter, and the fact he got back up off the floor and looked fine, I don't understand how the referee can read into that and say, I need to stop the fight. Sometimes a referee might subconsciously stop a fight because of the fighter's history. That happens, okay? So if we saw, for example, David Price, who we just spoke about a minute ago, if David Price gets knocked down, he's been viciously slept before. So if you see him get knocked down in a fight and he gets back up, sometimes the referee subconsciously thinks to himself, this guy's took a lot of punishment throughout his career, and they'll stop the fight sometimes prematurely, or more premature than they should do on a normal day. However, that wasn't the case here, because that's not what's happened to Rances Barthélemy. Another thing is, if a guy has taken an absolute pasting, and then after being hit and hurt so many times, he finally goes down, and the referee kind of saves him and says, I'm going to call this fight off. But that's, again, not what happened. I just couldn't get my head around it, to be honest with you. So the guy doesn't have a history of being beaten up. He doesn't have, he didn't fight in a way where he was taking big punches and being hurt repeatedly in that fight there. And I can't remember the other. There was 3 things that referees do to stop fights, and anyway, he didn't tick any of the 3 boxes, so I don't know what the referee saw. It was a terrible, terrible stoppage. Some people saying the worst stoppage they've ever seen. It's certainly up there. In other news, let's go to the main event. Danny Garcia now 37-3, a majority decision over 12 rounds against Jose Benavidez Jr. I was very, very, very disappointed in Benavidez, obviously being the taller guy, the bigger guy naturally. I thought he could perhaps do something, but no. For me, he just got outboxed, and he waited patiently way too long. There'd be so many times where he'd stand in front of Danny Garcia and just wait to counter, but Garcia would just fight at his own pace. He'd land his punches, and he a lot of the time would just move out the way. By the time that Benavidez would counter, he'd be out there, out of the way, out of punching range. So I think Danny Garcia boxed quite well. I think Benavidez, though, more so, was very disappointing. And it was never a close fight, I don't think. I didn't score it at all, like I say, but for me, I struggled to give Benavidez 4 rounds. I think maybe I probably gave him 2 or 3, something like that. Maybe 4 at a stretch, I don't know. But certainly shouldn't have been a majority decision, I don't think so. And just before, because I almost forgot there, the Barthélemy and Russell fight, I do want to say that's 2 stoppages in a row now that have been extremely questionable, that Gary Russell Jr., or Gary Antoine Russell, I should say, has picked up. So he still has that 100% knockout ratio intact. But the sad thing is that the 2 previous knockouts, this one and the last one, have both been very, very questionable. Especially the last one before this one. God, that one against Victor Postel was criminal. But anyway, he continues with the knockouts, but it is what it is. Anyway, that is it though for the review part of the show. The final thing for me to do just before we wrap up this part is to welcome our special guest on this week's podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former IBF Super-Featherweight World Champion. It is, of course, Mr. Tevin Farmer. Tevin, welcome back on the show, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Hey, it's always a pleasure having you on, Tevin. It really is. So we last spoke back in January of 2020. I was in New Jersey at the time, the good old days, pre-pandemic. You were getting ready to fight Joseph Diaz later that month. The fight obviously didn't end up going to plan. You lost the title. I'll be honest, because that's what I do, but something for me seemed to be off with you. You didn't fight how you usually do. That's not me taking anything away from Diaz. He fought with a nasty cut. He boxed really well, but something for me was wrong with you. Your timing was off.
Yeah.
What actually happened now looking back, Tevin? You've had enough time to reflect.
It was multiple things wrong. The weight cut, and it was a lot of things wrong. But the thing is, I had a rematch, and they didn't give my rematch clause. I got effed over on that. They didn't give my rematch clause for a reason. They fought it for a reason, because they know, even at my worst, that night I gave them hell.
And I want to get on to your upcoming fight in just a minute, and I know that obviously for your upcoming fight there's been multiple postponements and stuff delaying it, but obviously you touched on it there. The rematch with Diaz was supposed to happen, but all in all, by the time you get in the ring in a few days' time, it's going to be just over 2.5 years since you last fought. What has kept you out the ring that long? It can't just be the Diaz rematch not happening and all these postponements.
Well, some of it was COVID.
Yeah.
Some of it was the rematch, and then the other time was just just waiting for the right moment, and just enjoying the fruit of my labor and things like that.
Okay. And what have you been doing in the meantime, Tevin? I mean, I don't want to get too personal into your personal business kind of thing, but what have you been doing in the meantime to make money and the rest of that?
Just handling my business thing that I got going on. Spending time with the family. Just living life, just living life and enjoying all the hard work that I've been putting in with boxing the past few years. I haven't really had time off. I've been fighting back to back to back. So just things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, you're fighting August 12th in Arizona. You'll be boxing former IBF lightweight world champion Mickey Bey. The fight initially was set to take place in Africa, then Dubai. What happened and how did it end up finally taking place in Arizona?
Well, Africa, it didn't happen because of COVID. A lot of COVID restrictions. Then Dubai didn't happen because of the last week we was there, the president had passed away. And over there they don't celebrate or do anything for about 40 days. And Floyd Mayweather had a fight the same weekend, and he couldn't even fight, so he had to go to Abu Dhabi, which is a little while from Dubai.
Yeah, no, for sure. And are you happier that the fight's happening in the States finally, even though it's right across the other side of the country?
I mean, I'm satisfied either way. I'm definitely more happy though. We can get a lot of fans, our local fans and our families and stuff like that to come out.
And would you agree, Tevin, that maybe yourself and Mickey are both in similar positions in your careers right now?
I mean, a little different, but yeah, I agree. A little different, though.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think it is a difficult one. I mean, yeah, you had quite a reign as a world champion. He obviously didn't. A lot of people think he was lucky to win the title, but his losses haven't been that bad losses. I mean, when you look back at the Cambosos loss, a split decision, look what he went on to do. Are you worried about the ring rust? I know Mickey's actually coming off more inactivity than you are.
Yeah, I mean, we both coming off a long layoff, but the thing is this: we're boxing. People don't understand. Sometimes being off can help you just as bad. It can do good for you just as it can do worse for you. Yeah. In my case, I was fighting more than anybody in the world, including Canelo. So the break for me was necessary, I feel.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think that's an interesting view, to be honest. You said there that you're kind of similar in terms of you're at similar stages in your career a little bit, but one thing I know you will agree with, you've both kind of had to take the hard road. I don't think you've had easy careers, either of you, and sometimes I'd even say you've not been managed the greatest along the way. Neither is he, I don't think. Where does
I didn't have I wasn't managed at all. I was just fighting.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
But where does the winner go and where does the loser go? Because it's a tough spot for the loser, man.
I have no idea. You know, his boxing has changed tremendously. I don't know. I don't know. You know, boxing has changed a lot, and you don't know what to expect with boxing nowadays.
Is there any plan in place at all? I'm guessing you've obviously sat down and you're thinking, right, I'm going to get this win. Is there any talk of the next step at this stage or not?
Hopefully, I can get back in the ring working on November.
Okay, so you would like to fight again this year?
100%.
Perfect, okay. And I want to ask you this as well. I believe this fight is at 135, is that right?
Yeah, 135.
Is that where you're going to be staying or will you be back down at 130?
No, I'm staying at 135.
Okay, interesting. Is there any names on your hit list? Because obviously there's one real champion at that weight now, Devin Haney.
Yeah, Devin, he world champion. He undisputed, actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's one guy who's got all the belts. Is there
Yeah,
anyone
I think Devin Haney is moving up though to 140.
Maybe so. But is there anyone at 135 that you've got your eye on, like they're on your hit list?
All of them.
All of them? Anyone in particular or no?
No, not in particular. You know, I got to do whatever it takes to get the title at 135, become a two-time world champion. I think Devin going to 140. He a good friend of mine, him and his dad. So, I'm hoping they go to 140 so they can relinquish the belts, and I can beat everybody else and then fight. You know, and if you don't go to 140, then you know eventually, if it makes sense for the both of us, and then me and him will fight. But until then, I'd rather him go to 140 because he's actually, I feel like he's a big guy, and I feel like he's getting too big for 135, and he go to 140, relinquish some belts, and I go take over.
And even though you want to stay at 135, obviously that's down to you. But just from my point of view, I would have loved to have seen you back at 130, just because the division's so exciting at the minute. Obviously, with the likes of
they gotta come up because they gotta come up. I did my part at 130 already. I proved myself already at that weight.
All it is that there's a guy, obviously, I don't know if you saw the fight, but Eddie Hearn has got Joe Cordina, who just knocked out Kenichi Ogawa. That's
easy work. I beat the shit out Kenichi Ogawa. And Eddie Hearn wasn't there, put one of his fighters in there with me.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Okay, yeah. 135 is where we're at. Okay, no problem at all. There's a lot of big fights there. Of course, a lot of good contenders.
There's a lot of fights there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good contenders. A lot of guys in the States as well.
Yeah, 135 is a hell of a division. You know, I'm gonna go there and run it.
Yeah, no, it always has had a lot of big names. Doesn't always get the credit, that division, but I like you in that division. It's a good addition to it. Just before we wrap things up, Tevin, if you've got any closing words, I always like to say, if you want to say anything before we let you go, you can say whatever you like. Like I say, we haven't had you on for a couple of years now.
I just want everybody to tune in. They go all, or if you're around the area or you want to fly in, you can purchase tickets from my Instagram link in my bio. And you also can watch it, the link in my bio. And, you know, it's going down August 12th. It's Tevin Farmer and Mickey Bey. And I'm excited, man. Shout out to Bey Brothers Promotions, Tevin Farmer Promotions, EJ, Shantae, Big in Life Entertainment, and stuff like that, you know. Big things on the 12th, you know. And then the winner, which will be me, looking to do bigger things, you know. And, you know, become two-time world champion.
There we go. It goes down in Arizona, August 12th. Once again, hit Tevin up on Instagram. The link for the tickets is in his bio. And also, Tevin, you didn't plug it, but I'm going to. Go on YouTube and follow Life as Tevin and Poker.
My man. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm going to get back on my YouTube thing. And my Instagram, whoever don't know it, is Tevin Farmer 22.
There we go. Listen, Tevin, it's always great speaking with you, brother. Thank you for your time.
You too.
Best of luck, and we'll speak after for sure.
I appreciate it. Shout out to y'all, man. Thank you.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, usually is the news part of the show, but there's no news. So if anything develops from now to the end of the show, I'll talk about it on the outro. So with no further ado, let's move straight to the preview part of the show. We're going to start here on Saturday at the SSE Arena, the Odyssey, the former Odyssey Arena, I think it used to be called, in Belfast, United Kingdom. Not so sure which channel this is going to be on, or if it's even going to be on TV. I've got no idea, actually. But anyway, it's going to be quite interesting, I think, this card. Let's start with the undercard. We've got Sean McComb, 13-1 in a 6-rounder against Ramiro Blanco, who's 18-11-3. We also have Paddy Donovan, 8-0, getting in with Tom Hill, who's 10-2. That's over 8 rounds. Brilliant fight on the undercard here that I really love. Tyrone McKenna, 22-3 with a draw, gets in with Chris Jenkins, 23-5 with 3 draws. I tell you what, that's a great fight, and I was stunned to see that Tyrone McKenna's such a massive favourite. I was absolutely stunned about that, because I guess career-wise he hasn't achieved what Chris Jenkins has achieved. And then I thought to myself, why is Chris Jenkins the underdog here? Then I thought, oh yeah, he did get banged out early against Florian Marku. Maybe that's it, because prior to that he was doing okay. He beat Julius Indongo. And then I thought to myself, what has McKenna done lately? Well, in his last fight, he got banged out by Regis Prograis. So, yeah, it's kind of strange. But really and truly, I guess that, both guys are coming off knockout losses. I would say that Chris Jenkins is more established and has, better skills and everything than Tyrone McKenna. Is Tyrone McKenna, though, a little bit fresher? I don't know, but I was very surprised to see Chris Jenkins quite a big underdog. I'm going to put a little tiny bet on him to win the fight. We'll see how that one goes. Elsewhere on the card, we have Padraig McCrory, 13-0, getting in with Marco Antonio Periban. That's a man who I haven't seen for a long time. I actually thought he was retired, to be honest. Periban, oh my God, I remember him getting in with the likes of James DeGale all those years ago. Been in there with James DeGale, Joshua Buatsi, Jalen Love, Avni Yildirim, and I think one or two others. But yeah, Periban, wow, that's a name from the past. That's going to be weird. And the main event, Michael Conlan. This is so interesting. Michael Conlan, 16-1, gets in with Miguel Mariaga, who's 30-5 of Colombia. Now, Miguel Mariaga, 26 KOs from his 30 wins, so he can certainly bang. There's no question about that. Remember, Michael Conlan is coming off that knockout where he was knocked out brutally, where he was knocked out of the actual ring in round 12 against Lee Wood. So he's getting straight back in with arguably the biggest puncher that he's ever boxed. So I think that's crazy. And also, Mariaga, he does have his limitations, and his limitations are that he himself isn't the best, I guess, in terms of his skills. He doesn't have the skills of Conlan. Conlan will be picking up a nice early lead, I think, in this fight here, if he's not gun shy in any way. If he's going to be able to come back in this fight here and not think about being knocked out, because if he's thinking about being knocked out and he's a little bit hesitant, then he could end up getting hit early on, and he could end up, staying hit, as they say. It's very risky, I think, but yeah, skill-wise, Mariaga can't really mess with Conlan. Mariaga can be quite easily outboxed, and he's also 35 years of age now. But yeah, he's more kind of known for his losses. He lost on points to Joet Gonzalez. He lost on points to Oscar Valdez. He lost on points to Nicholas Walters, another name from the past. And the one time he got stopped was when he got in there with Vasily Lomachenko. At one point, he was going to take on Shakur Stevenson, but the fight never ended up actually happening. So I think it's a really hard comeback fight there for Conlan, and he's got the pressure of it being in Belfast as well. So again, I'm going to put a sneaky little wager on Miguel Mariaga. I think there's a couple underdogs on this card that could potentially pick up wins. Moving out now to the Sheffield Arena in Sheffield, Yorkshire. This one's going to be on DAZN. It's going to clash, unfortunately, with the Conlan card. Let's start with the undercard. We've got heavyweight, the Romford Bull, Johnny Fisher, 5-0 in a 6-rounder against Mikael Resinger, who has a record of 3-1. That's over 6 rounds there. We've also got Campbell Hatton, 7-0. He gets in with Mikkel Dufek, who's 34-23 with 2 draws. That's a massive jump up in terms of experienced opponents there, because Campbell Hatton, he's boxed a few guys early on that hadn't really had many fights. I think most of his opponents had less than 10 fights. This is a guy here who's had almost 60. This will be his 60th fight. That's madness. He's got 34 wins. I tell you what, this is going to be interesting again. I wonder if there's any value in putting a little sneaky bet on Dufek. I don't know. 34 wins, 22 KOs. Ooh, I'm not sure. To be honest, he put together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins in a row up until his last fight. Wow. That's interesting there. Oh my God. Wow. I'm going to be betting on some underdogs this weekend. That's over 6 rounds, by the way. We've also got Kieran Conway, 17 and 2 with a draw. Conway coming off that win last time out against James Metcalf. He gets in here with Arrow Schwartz, who's 19 and 5 with a draw. That's over 8 rounds there at Super Welter. We've also got Hopi Price, 7 and 0 over 8 rounds against Alexander Mejia, who's 18 and 3. We've got Jordan Thompson, 13 and 0, 11 KOs. He's been banging everyone out since he returned to the ring. I think he took a couple years out, come back with 3 knockouts, all within 2 rounds. He gets in with a guy called Vasil Dukar, who some people might remember getting banged out really in recent times by, I think he got banged out, who was it by now? Mike Perez, the Cuban, yeah, he got him out of there. He's also been in there with Chris Billum-Smith, and he also got in there with someone else. I think I wanted to say it was, I thought it was Okoli, but I'm not entirely sure it was. I think it was another guy from the UK though, and he lost to him. Let me think. No, I'm not sure. But yeah, Vasil Dukar has definitely been in there with Chris Billum-Smith. I remember that much. Anyway, he's quite tough, to be honest. It's a good fight, really, against Jordan Thompson. To be honest, Jordan Thompson should probably get him out. It's for the IBF European Cruiserweight title as well. That one there. Also, a brilliant women's fight on the card for the WBC International Super Lightweight title over 10 2-minute rounds. We've got Sandy Ryan, 3 and 1, getting in there with Erica Annabella Farias of Argentina. The pair fought last time out, so it's a rematch here, of course, an instant rematch. And yeah, last time out they gave the decision to Erica Farias. It was a split decision over 10 2-minute rounds, but she was the rightful winner in most people's eyes, and here they get it on again. Is it another case of Sandy Ryan being a bit too rushed? Is it a bit too soon? Should she have perhaps picked up another couple of wins, a couple confidence boosting wins, and then got in there with her? We shall see. It's either going to be brilliant matchmaking or absolutely terrible. There's going to be no in between there. All the best to Sandy Ryan, all the best to Erica Farias as well. And I think it's the main event. Dalton Smith, 11 and 0. He gets in with Sam O'Mason, who's 17 and 3 with a draw. Not the most exciting fight, to be honest. I'm more so looking forward to the undercard fights, like that women's fight I just mentioned. I'm more interested in that fight there. I'm more interested in Jordan Thompson and Vasil Dukar. I'm more interested in Campbell Hatton and Michael Dufek. I should say the main event is for the vacant British super lightweight title, so I think Dalton Smith will win the fight quite easily, I'd say, and he will become British champion, so that's brilliant for him. Moving out now to the Commerce Casino in Los Angeles, California. Friend of the show, Sulem Urbina of Mexico, 12 and 2 with a draw, gets in with Josep Vizcaino, who is 10 and 9. That's over 6 2-minute rounds there. And moving to the final card to mention, it takes place at the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas, USA. Going to start with the undercard. We've got Beck the Bully, Bektemir Melikuziev, the guy that got banged out in one of the best knockouts of, I think it was last year, wasn't it, against Gabe Rosado. He is 9 and 1. He gets in over 8 rounds against Sladan Janjanin, who's 32 and 11. I've seen him box a few different guys. We also have Alex Martin, a guy who's 17 and 4. Some people will remember he was a lot better than some people thought he was going to be when he boxed Michael McKinson, when McKinson was set to take on Virgil Ortiz Jr., and then Alex Martin on fight week became his opponent. So it was a bit of a tricky puzzle for Michael McKinson, because he was set to take on this 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 orthodox fighter who is a massive puncher and is a pressure fighter in Virgil Ortiz, and instead on fight week they put him in there with a boxer who's very negative, who wants to kind of box a move, run as they say at times, and he's also a southpaw. So southpaw versus southpaw wasn't the best thing, and he kind of showed that he's a decent fighter though, Alex Martin. Well, anyway, he gets in with Hank Lundy, 31-10 with a draw. I thought he'd retired after losing to Robbie Davies Jr., friend of the show from the UK, when he got banged out in just 2 rounds 8 months ago. But all the best to Hank Lundy, who finds himself in the away corner once again, of course. Elsewhere on the card, we have Maurice Hooker. This is a really interesting fight, Eddie, and I'm going to probably come to you for it. Maurice Hooker, 27-2 with 3 draws. Obviously, former world champion at 140. He gets in there with Blair Cobbs, who's got a record of 15-1 with a draw. I like these weird fights because there's a lot on the line for somebody, and that somebody is Blair Cobbs. Obviously getting knocked out in his last fight against Alexis Rocha, gets in with Maurice Hooker here. Maurice Hooker hasn't had the smoothest run of recent times. He was knocked out in 7 rounds last time out by Virgil Ortiz. However, he gave him quite a good fight up until that point. So yeah, there's a lot on the line really for both guys, I guess, but a loss for Blair Cobbs here, and he's got to really, really do some thinking about what has to happen next. And as for Maurice Hooker, I mean, again, if he were to lose to Blair Cobbs, yeah, he's in a tough spot really, because I mean, he was world champion at 140, hasn't really made the splash at 147, and losing to Blair Cobbs, who's coming off a knockout loss to Rocha, he would be in a tough position. So yeah, in many ways, I guess there's a lot on the line for both men. I will just run on to the main event, and then I'll come to you, Eddie, if you want to touch on any of the undercard fights or the main event itself. Virgil Ortiz Jr., we're finally getting it. It has been rescheduled. It's happening this Saturday, live on DAZN, by the way. 18-0, 18 KOs. Virgil Ortiz Jr. gets in over 12 rounds against Michael McKinson, 22-0. Michael McKinson of the UK, friend of the show. It's a fight he's wanted since they first arranged it, and obviously he was devastated when he didn't get the fight with Virgil Ortiz, who came down with that horrendous illness. So what I will say is Michael McKinson has upset the odds. Just for those that don't quite know Michael McKinson, he's upset the odds many a time, and he's known really as this guy who can't really punch. He's only got about 2 or 3 knockouts out of his 22 wins. Problem is though, he drops guys a lot. So even though he doesn't get all the stoppages, he does drop guys quite a lot. He's an excellent mover. He's a bit of a switch hitter, but I guess more so a southpaw. He's very, very tricky. And he said it himself, I have the style to beat Virgil Ortiz. And he believes in himself unbelievably, if that makes sense. He has a lot of self-belief. He always backs himself. It's his dad who coaches him as well. It's a family unit. His brother's a boxer as well, so it's very, very much a family unit. And like I say, he went out there to fight Ortiz. The fight fell through the first time round. On the week of the fight, they tried to give him about, I think, 13 different opponents. He said yes to absolutely every one of them. He ended up getting in with Alex Martin. He managed to beat him in the end. It was a tougher fight than we thought, and he didn't, I guess, make the big statement that he would have liked to have made. But the fight has been rescheduled. It's happening on Saturday. I'm so excited. Of course, many people are expecting Ortiz to do what he does to everyone and bang him out, because he gets everyone out of there. He's still got that 100% knockout streak running, but Michael McKinson does have the tools to frustrate, and he does have the tools to outbox and win. I just don't know if he's going to be strong enough. He can't let the occasion get to him, and it's a tough, tough ask. There's no one who can say it's not. He's very smart though, and he knows the task at hand, and he's very calculated, very clever. And whenever he's needed to deliver, he's delivered. So I think it's going to be good. But hard to side with him. I'd love to see him do it, but it's hard to side with him. But I tell you what, if there's someone in in any fight that's going to be taking place in the next few months that I want to win, I want it to be McKinson. I'd love to see him beat Virgil Ortiz, and I don't think many people are rooting for Mikey McKinson. He doesn't have a massive fan base, but one thing is for sure: if you're a Jaron Ennis fan, you will be rooting for McKinson. Anyway, Eddie, before I wrap the show up, did you want to say anything about that card there at all?
Oh man, that Blair Cobb situation, man. After losing the way he did to the last kid he fought, Rocha, right? I think that's it's like, and all the stuff he talks, all the crap he talks, to have a situation like that happen. You can't. Obviously, he's not going to end his career on a loss, especially with still having some time left. Even though he's at like 32, he still has time. You know what I mean? But you have to come back, and you have to be. I think with guys like him, they come off as like the kind of guys who they train and everything, but they're just hard. It's hard to believe that they go in the gym and actually try to get better, because a lot of times these kind of guys who have an extremely high opinion of themselves really feel like they're already as good as they could possibly get, and there's nobody else that could beat them. Well, in this situation, he's been humbled a little bit, so now he has to figure out his role now going into another fight. And I'm not sure. I don't really know much about the kid that he's fighting. I heard, I've heard about him, and he's supposed to be pretty good, but he's also coming off of a big loss, knockout loss. Yeah, Maurice Hooker. I haven't really seen much of him.
You haven't seen him? Okay.
Not much. But I mean, look. At the end of the day, they both have something to prove, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be an interesting fight. Of course, I know Blair from him being in the gym with us back at Shooters back in the day when he was a kid. But now he didn't. I mean, look, you got to give him credit. He's trying to sell himself. He's trying to make himself, a big draw. You know what I mean? Whether you make people hate you or love you, as long as you get them to notice you, you can make money with it. So I mean, I applaud him for that. But the more you talk, the more you're going to have that bullseye on your back, and then you're going to have to perform. So the way he lost to Alexis Rocha can't happen again, because if it happens again, he's just going to be a laughing stock, and you don't want that kind of a situation at all. As far as the main event was Virgil Ortiz and McKinson. I mean, Virgil Ortiz, obviously, everybody knows of him with the 100% knockout ratio, but guys like McKinson, who are tricky, crafty guys who don't really care about knocking you out, they just want to win, are very, very difficult to beat. Those are the kind of guys, like it's like when you're coming up in boxing and you're a young guy, and you meet that guy who has, like, I don't know, 100 fights, but never been knocked out once. It's like they got that motivation to just survive, so they can get that paycheck next week when they got to fight wherever else they're going to be at. You know what I'm saying? It kind of has that kind of a situation. But in this case, he's a kid. Obviously, this guy, he can fight. He's skilled. He has a lot of these tricks. He knows how to survive. You know what I mean? He's one of those spoilers too. So Virgil Ortiz really has to come with his A game. He's got to fight this like it's for a world title, because it is, in a sense, because he wants to make sure that he can win this fight to continue to go on and challenge for one later on. So, and forget about, in this situation, in my opinion, the knockout. Forget about the knockout. Just go out there and get the win. If the knockout presents itself, get it. You know what I mean? Most guys lose fights against these tricky customers because they're looking for one punch and they're looking for a big knockout. You know what I mean? Just ask, what's his name? Jesus, the 130 pound, the one that beat Lomachenko. Jesus, I can't remember. Lopez. He was looking for that one shot against. What is wrong? I'm taking too many punches, man. I can't remember. Yes, he was looking for a highlight reel knockout against him, and look what happened. Kambosos ended up taking the decision. So it's just, you see so many different examples of how things can go wrong. If I'm Virgil Ortiz, I'm just going out there trying to win the fight in the best possible way. You know what I mean? So, interesting card. I'm definitely going to want to see it. But, but there's a lot that can go into it. And, we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely, we are. There's a lot of fights, I think, that are going to be really good this weekend. Obviously, a couple upsets that I can see happening in Belfast, a couple upsets that I can see happening in Sheffield, and a couple upsets that I can see potentially happening in the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. So it's going to be very, very interesting. It certainly is. But that brings the preview part to a close. The final thing for me to do is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 355 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A huge shout out to our special guest on this week's podcast, the former IBF Super-Featherweight World Champion Tevin Farmer. All the best to him come August 12th in Arizona. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to you, the listeners. Thanks once again for tuning into this week's podcast. There has been one piece of news break whilst we've been recording the show. Joe Joyce will be fighting Joseph Parker. September 24th is the date for that one in Manchester at the AO Arena. The fight will be telecast on BT Sport pay-per-view. There's been no announcement yet on the undercard, but what a main event that'll be. But that's about everything from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we shall see you all again next week.